Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. We're really glad you're here. Thank you for being with us today, and special thanks to our panelists who've taken time out of their busy schedules to be with us as well. We want to jump right into the content today. We're really excited for the format of this. We've had a lot of webinars. You can see those webinars on logmycalls.com/webinar. That's logmycalls.com/webinar. We've done probably 80 or 90 webinars in the last 14 months or so, and the recordings are all on that site. But we've not really done a panel like this where we have a couple, 3 guests, and they discuss various marketing topics as we head into 2014. And so we're excited for the format and excited for the guests. So first, I just want to make a couple of announcements, and we'll introduce our panelists and then get into the actual content. First, this webinar is being recorded. So we encourage you to pay close attention, but if you have to leave for whatever reason, the recording will be emailed to you tomorrow morning bright and early. Second is share this recording in your organization, share it on social media. It's going to be a link that you can share. So please share that and get some more traction for this content that will be provided today. Second, we encourage you to ask questions as we go throughout the panel discussion. We'll be taking questions at 4 different times. And so type those in at any time, and I'll read those to our panelists, and they can address those. So please ask questions. Just type them in the little question bar. The other element of this that I want to make sure that you all understand before we actually get into the presentation and introduce our panelists is who is Log My Calls? Why do we do these webinars? We're a call tracking and call analytics provider. So we tell marketers which ads, campaigns, and keywords generate phone calls. And then we also analyze the content of those calls to help marketers determine what happened on the calls. So actually sort of listening to calls without listening to calls, if you will. We can tell lead quality, whether there was an appointment set, a purchase date, etc., all through our proprietary software. And then finally, we also won the Amazon Award last year. There were 2,500 companies, and we won, so we were excited. And then the next question is, why do we do these webinars? The reason is because our audience consists of marketers, and we wanted to provide useful marketing content. That's our purpose. That's why we do them. So as I said, you can see our upcoming and past webinars at logmycalls.com/webinar. So let's introduce our panelists today. We had Ahava Liebtag, who is the president of AHA Media Group outside of D.C. She's written several books and has worked as a marketer primarily in the healthcare world, but in a lot of spaces. But she is actually very ill today and was unable to join us. She emailed me this morning, apologized profusely, and said, you know, my voice, I don't think will stand it. So we excuse her, and we'll get her on for another webinar here in the next several months. We do have Michael Hackmer, though. He's the founder of Social Web Tactics, a digital marketing firm located outside of D.C. He's also the former online marketing manager at BIA Kelsey. We actually worked with Michael to create a webinar for BIA Kelsey, a group of local marketing analysts. He's also worked with startups, SMBs, Fortune 500 companies across North America. And then we have Michael Fleischner, who's the president of Upward SEO. They're an SEO and reputation management company. He is a top-selling author. He's appeared on the Today Show, ABC News, Bloomberg, and his book has sold 25,000 copies, more than. So that's better than 25,000 is more than 25,000. So we're excited that our panelists are here, and as I said, we excuse Ahava and hope she gets feeling better. So gentlemen, Mr. Hackmer and Mr. Fleischner, you're both named Michael. So we'll do our best to distinguish you. And here's the way that the content will work today. We're going to go through some SEO tactics for 2014. Then we're going to get into some reputation management tactics, as well as social media marketing and then content marketing. So what we'll do is we'll have each of our panelists address the subject, and then we'll take questions on the subject. So let's jump right into it. First of all, Mr. Hackmer, Michael, thank you so much for joining us. I tried to introduce you effectively. Anything I missed before we jump right into the content?
No, it was a great introduction. I appreciate it, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
No problem.
Likewise, McKay. Excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate it, and thanks for your time. And so first for SEO tactics, Mr. Hackmer, you've got about 4 or 5 minutes here to go over a few tactics, and then Mr. Fleischner, you'll go, and then we'll have some questions. So Michael Hackmer, go ahead.
Great. Thanks so much, and thanks to everybody else for joining today's event. Really appreciate your time and your participation. So we'll also have a few poll questions as we go through this, and if you have any questions, please use your GoToWebinar panel and submit them to us, and we'll try to field those as we go along and definitely reach them at the end. So really quickly, I just want to kind of go through this. So many people talk about SEO, and usually what we hear about from SEO is just all these crazy algorithm changes that Google has going on, and some of them seem complex, but all we hear about is panda, penguin, hummingbird, all this different kind of stuff going on, and what does it all really mean? And I think one of the most important things that we have to all do as business owners, as marketers, is get a little more familiar about what SEO is all about. So one of the things I think 2014 is going to really bring to the table as far as a tactic, or at least an important piece of your overall marketing plan, is to actually educate yourself on what SEO really is, because it's evolved. Some people are saying that eventually it's just going to be phased out completely, but for right now, SEO is still really an important part of your overall marketing strategy, and it's important to really get familiar with what it means today in this particular context. Don't worry about what it was like 5 years ago or 2 years ago or even 3 months ago, because it's changed so much. So I would recommend just first and foremost getting some very simple basics on SEO, just so you can get yourself educated about it. And we're going to go over some of the basics as well as some of the key things that you need to focus on here. The other important tactic that I think you have to think about as you head into this year is to really get a professional site optimization report done of your site. And what does that mean, really? It means going to somebody who's got a credible company that can say, okay, we're going to use several different tools. We're going to go through your site. We're going to comb it, top to bottom. Really look for any extraneous code that's not working for you, and then really analyze all the pages, your content. And that way, when you go through it and get a detailed kind of report, the company should be able, or professionals should be able to come through with you and sit down, go through everything to give you a really good insight into what's going on with your site, what's working, what's not working. And a lot of cases, what that relates to, too, is just how the site is coded, designed, content, how you're performing in keywords, all those different kinds of elements, as well as content. But I think one of the most important things that a lot of companies don't do is to really actually sit down and understand who your customer is and who your audience is before you actually start building out a strategy, before you start going into all these things. I've run into so many different companies who, when you say, okay, who are you, what are you about, they really don't know. They don't really have a good, clear insight into who their audience is, what are they interested in. And I think one of the key aspects of SEO and social media and all the other marketing things that we're going to talk about today really comes back to understanding your customer and your target audience. Because this is not about just finagling a few words and moving some things around, or maybe better writing something. It's really understanding what is it that people need and addressing those needs. And I think one of the things that I've pulled together, too, is that I think if you can help simplify somebody's day or help them earn money in a different kind of way, help them in some form or fashion, then you're probably delivering what it is that your customer wants, so long as it relates back to your business. And in the short time that I have left, because I know I want to give time to Michael to chime in here and offer some of his tips and points, is that it's also important to understand that SEO is not an exact science. If you ever run into a company or go to hire someone, please understand no one can guarantee that they're going to get you on page 1 Google results 110% of the time or anything like that. There is a lot of testing and trial and effort that comes into SEO, and a lot of it just relates to how the audience is interacting with your pages and things like that. And at the end of the day, what it really comes down to, as I said, is that you have to focus on content that helps your audience either to A, solve a problem, or B, make money in some form or fashion. So I have my little timer. It says that I'm hitting up on 5 minutes, so I want to make sure that Michael has time to go ahead.
Great, thanks, Michael. And really just to echo everything that you've said here, I think especially as we consider search engine optimization and the role it plays in the overall marketing strategy, it really is one component that you obviously need to focus on, but you can't bet everything on SEO. And I think that's one of the challenges that small and medium-sized businesses face regularly. They look at SEO, they search for a couple of keywords, they're not there, and all of a sudden they get hot on SEO. But the problem with that is it is one pillar of a good comprehensive marketing strategy. And the second thing is, which you mentioned, Michael, I mean, you know, SEO is changing all the time. It's not an exact science, and it can take a considerable amount of time focusing on SEO before you see tangible results. And if you are looking for something to generate leads quickly, to produce an immediate return, then SEO probably is not the first place that I would go. And we do SEO for clients every day. So, you know, again, it kind of goes back to what Michael was talking about, really understanding your, not only who you're trying to target, but what your strategy is. And, you know, the more disciplines that you use to get your name, your brand, your products, services in front of customers, the better you will be. And SEO is obviously a fundamental aspect of that you should address. But I like to say it's more of a marathon and not a sprint.
That's awesome. So I want to open up a poll here. So everybody on your screen, you're going to see a poll, and the question is, what are you most focused on in terms of your SEO and your search engine strategy? And so make sure you answer that poll question. I want to get a sense. So the choices are content marketing, social media, reviews, mobile, local search, or PPC, because those are all elements of actually ranking organically. And we've got a few questions coming in as well, gentlemen. So Michael Fleischner, first question for you. In terms of the actual, I don't want to say red flags, but like you said, there's a lot of agencies or groups that promise immediate results. Any red flags that businesses should look for with agencies? And then I guess to piggyback off that question for Michael Hackmer is, if you're an agency, how do you distinguish yourself? What should you say to your client that is realistic, but also you've got to sell your product too? So Mr. Fleischner, go ahead as these results come in for this poll.
Yeah, you know, I definitely think that if you are being contacted via email, from a Gmail account or a Yahoo account or a Hotmail account, chances are that's probably not a great resource to trust your SEO to. You know, a lot of people tell me, obviously since I'm in the business, oh, I get offers every day from SEO companies. But, you know, the offers they're getting are emails that international companies are sending saying, hey, we can get you, like Michael's point earlier, hey, we can get you #1 rankings in 2 minutes and do it cheaply. Those types of relationships never end well. So, you know, I'll let Michael comment in terms of how to kind of differentiate ourselves as agencies that are viable and effective and have a track record. But, you know, the big red flag for me is if someone's soliciting you via email only and there isn't a phone number, there aren't other things to point to, I definitely would not put any you know, value in that type of contact. Michael, would you agree?
Yes, no, I absolutely agree, and I think to build off of that too, you know, I think one of the things that has changed over the last few years is that a lot of companies, both not just in the SEO space, but I think even in the web development space, particularly with coding, with other things, have resorted to using a lot of outsourcing into, you know, India. It's not just India, but other countries as well. Even in some cases, Eastern Europe and other parts of Asia beyond India. So, but India has really kind of been the foremost, you know, country, and usually has gotten the worst kind of rap. I think as far as companies who outsource SEO work, and then the results that you get back don't really work out really well. I've actually seen this firsthand in situations in which companies have relied on Indian firms to do coding work, and then the work that comes back is really shoddy and isn't really good. So I will say this, trust a firm, particularly a US-based company, that really understands the industry that you're in, but also has homegrown talent and expertise, because you know, it's sort of the old adage, you do get what you pay for, and you know, and you may end up paying a slight bit more of a premium for U.S.-based work, but the reality is that it really is that much better. And when you look at the possible negative impacts that can happen from doing black hat, from doing bad SEO work. I mean, you could be looking at getting your domain seriously penalized. That's happened in the higher ed space, particularly to some of the for-profits. Got hugely penalized with the updates for Google algorithms and things like that. Now, with that said, not all Indian firms are bad. I actually, in my last job, worked and had a firm in India that had special expertise in higher education and was very, very well versed in it. So it's a vetting process. So I would definitely look at companies from head to toe, really understand what is their niche, because every company is going to have a niche, particularly industries. And I know I'll do a little shout out to Ahava, even though she's not here. She does she does healthcare, and that is her niche. She does some other industries as well, but I mean, she does Johns Hopkins, she does major hospitals all over the country. So, every company has a niche. Look at the talent level and look at some of the results that they've produced, and that should give you a good measure of which to base your firm.
That's great. And we're seeing poll results come in too, so it looks like content marketing is a major focus, content marketing and social media as we move into 2014. I think that's fascinating, and that kind of piggybacks off the next question we're getting actually is, so we've written about this a little bit on our blog, blog.logmycalls.com, about how if obviously an agency has to, their precise methods are proprietary. They don't want to give out their secret sauce as to how they do things. But if an agency won't tell at least a little bit about what they're going to do tactically for you, that should be a red flag. Should it not? Am I barking up the wrong tree there? Shouldn't they give you some detail about their content and social strategies? Michael Fleischner, go ahead, take that first if you can.
Yeah, actually, I would even argue that, McKay, and say if they're not completely transparent, if they're not showing you everything they're doing and how they're doing it, then I would be a little bit suspect. Certainly if they're, let's say, leveraging authoritative links and have partnerships with either blog networks or something, they may not give you the exact URL, but SEO today is really all about content and authority and engagement on social and all these other components. So I think I'd be interested in Michael's opinion, but I would lean towards transparency only because what's required today is so different than going out and building 1,000 links to get your website ranked #1. So, Michael, would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I've worked with firms that, different, specific SEO agencies that, just very vague about what it is they're doing. The results are very minimal. And, at the end of the day, I think, your expectations have to be balanced. I think if you're looking at building out hundreds of links a month, that could be a red flag. That sends to Google saying, whoa, you've only been doing X, now you're doing Y. That's a huge spike. So, I think when you're building out links or you're building out any kind of SEO strategy, you really kind of want to be gradual in your approach. You want to work with a company that, is really transparent and open about how they're going to get you from point A to point B to point C. They don't need to give you the whole secret sauce recipe, but they should be able to give you a good detailed outlook about who's going to be involved in the process and give you a good point of contact and someone who's going to really walk you through it. There's no need at any point in time in going through this to ever feel like you don't understand what's going on.
That's well put, very well put. Guys, thank you for that information, because that's, I think, something that a lot of people have experienced is as you start to engage with an SEO firm, you maybe don't feel like you're getting tactically what they're going to do. So I think that's a good note to make. Let's move on to the next topic, reputation management. I think this is important, and it's growing in importance, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it, Michael Fleischner?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I really think, too, that it is part of everything else that we're talking about here for 2014. Whether we're talking about a content strategy or a social strategy, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that all those things are supporting your brand and what you're doing online. So, if I can, McKay, I'll jump in and kind of talk about, 5 things that this year, in 2014, you can do as a business to not only protect your reputation, but build your online reputation. And, before we even dive in, I think where this becomes so important is that the consumer has evolved. It used to be that they looked you up in the phone book if they needed a plumber and they called you and that was it. And that goes for not just services but products as well. And, the source or the accessibility of information about a particular company or product was very limited. Well, the opposite is true today. All you have to do is go to Google, type in a company name or a product name, and you have everything and anything you ever wanted to know about that particular company. And that's why reputation management is so important. And when I think about reputation management, I really think about page 1 and page 2 of Google. And that's the best place to start. If you don't know what your reputation looks like, just Google yourself. Google your company, Google a product. Even if you're a professional offering services, you may want to Google your name. And look at page 1 and 2, because that's what the majority of people, actually the majority of people never get past page 1. But the majority of people will see what's on those first couple of pages. And you want that information to be either positive or neutral. And my suggestion to everyone is document where you're starting from. So go out, do that, take some screenshots, document the information, and then, review each of those listings. Are they positive, negative, or neutral? And also look maybe beyond the first few pages for some positive listings. It's always easier to move something up in the rankings. I should say not always, but generally it's easier to move something up in the rankings than it is to get a new digital asset ranked, like a new blog or a new website or something like that. The next step is to leverage social media. Social media in general, and what I'm talking about here, Google Places, Google+, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, the Instagram, the most popular accounts, social media accounts, tend to rank well organically on their own. And if you're a business and you don't have a Facebook page, or you're not listed in LinkedIn, or you haven't taken advantage of a free Google Places account, that's always the best place to help your online reputation, at least from my perspective. Because if you can build those out, if you can point some links to those, especially from your own website, generally they tend to gravitate towards the top of search results, and obviously you control those assets, which is the goal. The next piece is really to focus on local search. And this isn't just for local businesses anymore. Even if you're a national or regional business, you want to take advantage of local search because, a lot of the searches that we do today, even on a desktop, are taking your location information into consideration before returning results. I don't know if we'll get a chance to talk about it at length today, but with, about 40% of all searches happening on mobile devices, oftentimes those search queries are local and for local businesses. And the local search area is really a place that you do want to focus on, because when somebody searches for you on your cell phone, what they see on page 1 needs to be managed and controlled as well. And there are plenty of easy ways to do that, starting with Google Places, using data aggregators who can just, distribute your business information to Yelp and Foursquare and Bing and Yahoo and everything else. All right, so local search is very important. And then the last piece is to think multimedia. Long gone are the days where page 1 results were nothing but listings for web pages. Today, if you do a search, there are PDFs that show up in search results. There are videos, which are very popular, taking up more and more space on page 1. There are all these other assets that you can create and post using popular social sharing sites like YouTube and SlideShare and so on, that will show up in search results. And the point there is when you're thinking about reputation and reputation management, you want to make sure that you're leveraging all types of media. And as you're producing new content, repackage that, redistribute it, and if you do that, you'll see that you will really protect your reputation and build a positive online reputation. So those are all the things that you should consider. And Michael, I know you might have a few thoughts on this as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think those are all really the key things. I think without knowing the total scope of the audience here today, I think reputation management, it applies to everybody. It applies, I've found, to service-oriented companies with a higher degree more, because you guys are the ones that are more than likely getting reviews on Yelp or Angie's List or other places. So it's a really critical aspect of your business to be a part of. I know we're going to have a poll coming up too, talking, kind of getting a feel for where people are with reputation management.
Yeah, let me launch that right now, Michael, while you keep talking. Perfect. I'll launch that, but keep going. But yeah, I do want to launch this because I think it's important for people to see. So please answer the question in this poll. Go ahead, Michael. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. So so I think really quickly from my end, to just kind of build off of what Michael has talked about, is one of the big dangers that we've seen with reputation management has been the challenge with how do I get positive reviews in different sites that'll help. How do I get listed in different directories so that my results are popping up? If I have products, how do I get my products? Because Google now has this sort of shopping capability when you search on products and things like that. So it requires really a level of expertise. So you need to talk to people, first of all, who have that experience with with getting companies and getting your reputation, getting your name out there into all these different local places. Because local search, particularly local mobile search, is really the wave of the future. Mobile search is now surpassing desktop search. And when people were shopping, particularly during the holiday season this past year, they may not actually have made a transaction using their mobile device, but they were using their mobile device as they were shopping. They were both price hunting, they were looking for where things were, they were looking for where stores were located. So all of that stuff really does tie back more and more into local search and having your location really set within Google and other search engines. But then the reputation side of it comes into play, because what's the first thing everybody sees? They see those reviews. And I know a lot of companies have struggled with reviews, and they've gotten a lot of negative reviews. One trend which I thought was really interesting has been there's been some companies that have actually taken legal action now. They consider that some of the false postings that have taken place, falsely, negatively harming their company and their business, they're actually filing defamation lawsuits. And so I think one of the interesting trends that we're going to see evolve over this year is the elimination or gradual phase out of anonymous postings that have made it kind of easier to kind of post things on Yelp and other sites. Because particularly in Virginia, we had a case recently where the Court of Appeals said, hey, you need to disclose who all of your anonymous posters are, because a cleaning company basically filed a defamation lawsuit, and they listed all of the anonymous posters as John Doe's, and needed actually that information to proceed with their case. So this is going to be an emerging trend. Reputation management is going to be a very, very hot thing in 2014. So it's definitely something that every company should pay attention to.
That's great. Last call on the poll, everybody. I'll give you about 5 more seconds to vote, and then we'll close it up and show the results. A question for you, Michael Fleischner, as we get these poll results in, is we've got a question here coming in. It talks about sites like Ripoff Report and other sites like that. What do you do if your company suddenly appears there, or places like it? Any suggestions on stuff like that specifically?
Yeah. Well, we definitely have a lot of clients who have Ripoff Report as one of their biggest issues. The challenge with Ripoff Report, ironically, is that it's a complete ripoff. So if there's a representative from Ripoff Report on the phone today, I'm sorry to be so direct. But essentially what happens is once you do appear on that site, if you want the information, there's really no guarantee that the information will be removed. Or if it is removed for a large fee, thousands of dollars, they will not guarantee that another listing won't reappear. And part of the challenge is that it's such an authoritative site, all you need are a few entries on there, and all of a sudden you're showing up in search results for a branded search, when you type in a company name. And generally the way that we deal with that is we don't focus on the negative, we focus on the positive. You know, we help the client identify those digital assets that perhaps are ranking well, but not above rip-off report, and we'll work to boost those and push rip-off report essentially off page 1 and sometimes page 2. So my response to the question, McKay, is, you know, when a company does see that, they really need to take inventory, see what digital assets they have, what they don't have. Perhaps they're not leveraging all the social media accounts that generally do well in search, and really focus on and accentuate the positive to push that off page 1 and possibly page 2, as opposed to going at it directly, because oftentimes companies are disappointed with the result.
That's good info. And Ken asks, he says, does Rip-Off Report list themselves on their own site? I would guess not. That's just
no. That's a good question, no. Excellent question.
Good question. All right, Michael Hackmer, what do you make of these results here we're seeing on our screen?
Yeah, I mean, this is not surprising. I mean, to see that over 2/3 of people are either not active or somewhat active, you know, is probably not very uncommon, particularly for a lot of small, mid-sized businesses. And really what it comes down to is it's a time management thing. And I think a lot of companies really struggle with all of the different pillars or pieces of marketing and sort of daily marketing activities that they need to do, because they've got a business to run. And so to actually sit down and figure out what's my content strategy going to be, what's my mobile strategy, what am I doing for online advertising, what am I doing for reputation management, it just, you know, you're sitting back thinking, hey, this, you know, I'm not Procter & Gamble here. I'm just, you know, Joe Smith trying to run a company. It becomes very daunting and difficult. And I think one of the things that we've seen in trends for a lot of companies for 2014 is that they are increasing their budgets to try to compensate for all these different kinds of marketing areas. And in some cases, they're bringing talent in-house to try to get people to manage these things, you know, and make that possible, or they're actually outsourcing it, which is a very common thing to do. And really, the only thing that I caution you with there is make sure that when you do outsource, if you do decide to go that route, that you find somebody who's going to be very active in communicating with you on what's going on and on a day-to-day basis. And I'd be interested, we'll look at the data and results to see who's very active, but that's good. If you're very active and you're already bad reviews, then you're ahead of the curve, which is great.
And McKay, if I could just interject for a second, I know we want to keep it moving. But you know, one suggestion that I have really with every client that we've ever taken on is the first step is to give people a place that you control to share their experience. You know, one of the biggest challenges we see with companies that have negative reviews, especially on popular social media sites, is because you know, they tried to call to complain and there was nobody to talk to, so they went right out to Yelp, or they went to, you know, some other site to leave a negative review. So the first step is make sure that there's a place that you control, which would maybe be on your site, which could be a forum, which could be a forum. It could be a customer review site, which is the strategy that we deploy. But, you know, give your customers a place to dialogue with you. And oftentimes that step alone goes a long way in mitigating any negative comments that you may receive.
That's an excellent point.
That's a great action item, I think, from the webinar today, is make sure we do that, because that's one thing that I think people wonder is how do you solicit those? But if you've got a place that you control, that solves the problem. So let's move on to social media, gentlemen. Let me hide this poll here, and we'll jump right back into our presentation. So social media marketing, this has obviously been a massive topic in 2013. I suspect it will get larger in 2014. I think, Michael Fleischner, you're first up to bat on this topic, sir.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, I'll definitely tag team with Michael on this, because I know we both have experience in this regard. But you know, here are a few strategies, especially this year, or guidelines that I would ask folks to think about and to follow as they move forward, because you know, social has been popular for the last maybe year to 18 months, but it's been around much longer than that. And you know, what I have here, I think, are some of the pitfalls or guidelines that people should certainly follow or be aware of as they embark on a social media campaign. Now, this is especially because different companies are in different places. Everybody's starting from a different place. And the question I always like to start with is, what's the goal of your social media campaign? And I think, Michael, you said this earlier when it comes to SEO, but I'd apply the same thing here with social media, which is managing your expectations. What is it that you want social media to do for you? Now, I'm of the perspective that social media is really there to help cultivate relationships, to build or build upon existing relationships, less so than attracting new customers. Although new customers will come through an active social media campaign, my feeling, again, from personal experience, is I've had a lot more success building and leveraging relationships, maybe for referrals through social media, as opposed to something like paid search, where you're generating clicks, putting people in some sort of marketing funnel, and converting them into clients. So the goal with social media is always, focus on what you want it to do and start slow. And start slow, again, this is relative to where you are in the social media sphere, but, if you've never done social media and you're saying, hey, 2014 is the year I want to start, then start with a Facebook page. You don't have to add 12 social media accounts. I'd rather you add one media account and develop content for that, which is relevant to your audience and is regular. One of the pitfalls is people really start with the charge and they go out and they start posting multiple times a day, and then after a week they're out of gas. The goal should really be, how do I create relevant, meaningful content on a regular basis? And when you do that, you will build followers. And there are really too many techniques to talk about on today's presentation, but you can obviously build followers organically, especially through referrals, through pushing out valuable content. There are also paid ways, whether you're advertising on Facebook, getting people to visit your page or driving people to your page, social contests. There are a lot of different ways to build followers. The focus should always be, at least in my mind, slow and steady wins the race, and you want to engage those followers. Manage expectations. So again, those who are using social to build their brand and communicate with their existing customers, in my experience, see more success over the long term than those who simply want to generate prospects or business directly from social. To me, social is really more of an interactive environment and community where you cultivate and build relationships. And the other piece, the last piece that I want everybody to be aware of, is that each social media network has its own purpose and strength. For example, if I ran an interior design business, I would probably lean more towards Instagram or Pinterest as opposed to LinkedIn if I wanted to showcase the value of my designs and the projects that I've done, and creatively what other people are doing in the space, because as a social network, that just lends itself more towards what I'm doing. And I think people get caught up, they visit a competitor's webpage and they've got a button to Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, blah, 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 and they say, oh, we have to have all that. But I think it's more important to kind of choose the square you want to be on and develop a social media campaign that's sustainable specifically for that particular channel. So those are some things to keep in mind as you think about social media in 2014. And the last thought I'll leave you with before Michael comments is, you should always have a goal or a set of goals, whether that's to be on a certain number of networks or a certain number of followers or related to content.
Great. Thanks. So I think a lot of really great points there, and I agree 100% with everything that Michael's talked about. So here's like some basics when you sort of look at the social media marketing sort of diagram and sort of the way I kind of look at things, the first thing that I always try to tell people when they want to jump into social media is that social media is really the last piece of your total arsenal strategy or what have you. The first and foremost, you have to understand who your customer is, who your target audience is. You have to make sure that your site is well optimized and that you're ready to go on that end of it. And then sort of the third piece to it that I look at as well is the content marketing piece, which we're going to talk about at the end. And that's really sort of, I think, the lead-in to social media, because social media is the channel with which you're sharing all of this stuff. So once you figure out what it is that people want, once you figure out how you're going to ultimately write it and build it and all that kind of good stuff, then it's a matter of, okay, now we're going to share it. How do we share it? And so I think social media marketing, you really have to understand your customer profile and build out your content strategy before you get to that. And it all ties into SEO, because with social media marketing, it's going to be a really great piece to your SEO strategy as well. Search engines really, they do reward businesses that publish quality, consistent content and have strong social signals. And so that's one of the things where, as you build out, as Michael says, start slowly, build out with Facebook or build out with whatever platform is really going to be the biggest draw for you, and then branch outward. And the more social signals and the stronger your social signals, the better you're going to be able to establish that. One of the things that we haven't talked about in social media as much, and it's sort of interesting for me, is this sort of Google Plus debate. And it's one of those things where obviously Google is going to rate and pull in the stuff, its own products with a higher value than probably other things. And so while it's important, it is one of those things where in building out a content strategy and having done it, I really don't see a whole lot of great positive results in Google+. It's really just more of, it's a time-consuming process, and you have to be very careful that you don't let it consume your time. And so it's a matter of balancing your SEO and social media strategy with Google+ and how it relates to your customer base. So I don't know if I have another slide on this on social media or not. But yeah, and the other piece to social media marketing that I wanted to kind of talk about is lead generation. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because we could talk in great depth about social media and lead gen. But really, you need to be connected through a lot of different sources and really try to find the right way to channel your social media activity so that you're actually able to pull in leads and then measure that against whether it's sales or however it is you want to determine your return on investment. In some cases, I think social media is really more geared towards, as Michael was kind of talking about before, that channel that you create to receive feedback from people. I've do work for a defense contractor, and it was really fascinating. Got a comment posted to the Facebook wall saying, "Why are you sending my dad to Iraq every 3 weeks?" And so it's things like that that really kind of say, okay, wow, we need to respond to that. And they're great examples of social media campaigns and strategies and things that companies have done either to increase engagement and generate sales or to use it as a great customer service tool to try to help people get through a particular process. I'll give you a couple of examples really quick. In the higher ed space, we've seen social media really used as the customer service model. The government uses social media for customer service, and I'll tie that together. In education, the financial aid department, they get a lot of hate mail and a lot of hate on their social media threads, but people do ask them questions on Twitter about, hey, why is my financial aid not being processed? Why is this not happening? And people are upset, and they really actually talk people through the process and help manage their expectations. And in a lot of cases, if you're helping someone feel good and creating that positive experience, you're really, in the end, doing a lot of great and good for your brand as opposed to just ignoring them or not giving them that outlet, because when people are angry, they will sound off. And so it's, to Michael's point, it's better to give them that channel to do that. And then lastly, from a lead gen perspective, social is great for creating, campaigns. If you know the Super Bowl is coming up, you can organize sales and structures around that. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with social media. And I know we've got a poll that we want to throw up there. So I'll pause and let that go on.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you by launching the poll there, Michael. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
Your point was well made about campaigns. Keep going there. I want to make sure you get to what you wanted to say. I just wanted to throw it up to give people a chance to respond.
Yeah, so I just think, just to kind of round it up, I don't want to go on too much about this, but I do think, because I know we want to get to content marketing, but it's, I think within social there's that great potential to integrate it more within what it is that you're doing in real time. And this ties even back to to some extent, what Log My Calls does, as far as call tracking and analytics. Because if you're doing a mobile campaign or a phone campaign or any kind of social media campaign, you can use different phone numbers, get that tracking, get those results in. So a lot of people don't sometimes think that there's an ROI component to social media, but there really is. There's a very strong one. So it's definitely something to pay attention to.
And
Very
McKay,
good.
if I can,
yeah, go ahead.
if I can, just one quick thing to build on what Michael is saying is that you have to remember social media is a two-way dialogue. And I think that's one mistake that I certainly see companies making, where they're pushing information out via social, whether it's Facebook or Twitter, but they're not monitoring, they're not responding in a timely manner, they're really not engaging fully with the people who are interacting with them on social. And that's a component piece you really need to think about before launching really any social campaign. You have to not only publish the information, but you really have to respond and be part of that dialogue.
Yeah, that's great. And to piggyback off what you were saying, Michael, I think the success we've had, and we're a B2B company, right? So we're targeting other businesses, so it's certainly different. But we've seen very little actual customer acquisition success by just posting things on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn. But when you can actually go to LinkedIn and get in a group discussion with somebody and send them a message directly, then you have great success for, just like you said, getting referrals, but then also B, actually getting businesses to actually demo the product and then eventually buy from us. So, yeah, I agree with that. And then to Michael Hackmer's point, I think there's a lot of campaigns you can actually run with these social media tools that sometimes people don't do. They're paid campaigns sometimes, but there's some very effective tools these social media platforms all offer. A couple questions, guys, before we jump into the poll results here, which are coming in. About 1 more minute on the poll, everybody, before we conclude it. We've got a question here about, let's see. This one actually is sort of interesting about Facebook. The guy says, I have not seen any results from Facebook marketing. Are you aware of any positive case studies about Facebook marketing? Either of you care to respond to that? Michael Hackmer, why don't you respond to that first? Are you aware of any grand results from Facebook that you've seen or personally familiar with?
Yeah, so I think this is sort of my takeaway on Facebook is that if you're running some kind of a social cause or a campaign in which you're doing fundraising around a cause that really gets people very active and very engaged, Facebook is a great resource and a great tool because it's that shareability, that viral nature to Facebook that makes it really strong. You also have to look at the generational aspect of it too, because young people are dropping off in large numbers from Facebook, so the audience is a little bit older. You see more and more women are coming on, people with higher income capabilities and things like that, and people who are really driven around particular causes and events. They have a great marketing tool built within Facebook itself that allows you to really target ad campaigns, but also if you do things just strictly from, and they're expanding, of course, the advertising capabilities. Not so much great for business, but around events and particular kinds of social causes is where I've seen it the strongest. And that's just kind of my take. It doesn't mean that you can't be successful doing Facebook advertising from a business perspective. You know, I think what you're going to find, though, is that your community and reach is going to be a little bit narrower. And I think you're almost kind of better off looking more at LinkedIn, where people are more focused on business things than they are when they're on Facebook. And that's just kind of my experience. I did have one marketing guy who joked. He said, I hadn't looked at my Facebook wall for a while, and I can summarize it as cats, cats, some e-card, some e-card, what I had for dinner, cats, some e-card. And, you know, and so there's some truth to that. I mean, it's a very social kind of network, and people want to laugh, they want to cry, they want to share personal things, and they want to get engaged in battling cancer or stopping, you know, a school from doing X, Y, or Z. Those are really, I think, the areas where we see Facebook performing the strongest. That's my opinion, and that's basically what I've seen.
Great. And Michael Fleischner, react to this poll that you're seeing on your screen here. It looks like the plurality of our audience, I should say, is not terribly engaged on social media.
Yeah. I mean, overall, you know, I definitely think there's a core group there that's pretty active. You know, just kind of looking at 1 to 3 times, and more than 3 times, about 44%. I mean, I would say that's pretty active, probably ahead of most. But, you know, we still have a large percentage who are about 50% who, you know, do it occasionally. So, you know, again, I think just kind of echoing what Michael said, I think you gotta choose where you want to be and how you want to use it. And, you know, even with Facebook, where we've seen success is, you know, with specific offers that are embedded in people's feeds, you know, and things of that nature, as opposed to, you know, just managing a Facebook page and you know, sharing relevant content. So, again, start with what is the goal, and then you can build your campaign from there.
Great. And then the last topic before we conclude today's content marketing, there aren't any slides on this, so I want to give you each a chance to just discuss a few action items as we move into 2014 for content marketing. We've got one more poll we'll throw up while we're discussing it. So Michael Hackmer, why don't you go ahead first on this one and talk a little bit about content marketing and some action items as we go into 2014 here.
Sure. So I think, you know, just to kind of hit on some high-level points, content marketing has become, I think, as we phased out 2013 and we were really kind of looking at 2014, content marketing really emerged as one of the go-to things for a lot of businesses and a lot of companies. Here's the challenge, of course, right, is that many companies are faced with this problem of, okay, am I producing enough content? What kind of content do I need to produce? Am I going to be able to produce enough of it? How much money is it going to cost me? How much time and resources do I have that capability to kind of get there? So people are asking a lot of questions about how to basically build their content marketing strategy and plan. And really it comes back to almost kind of the basics and starting from the very beginning, which is who is your audience and what is it you're trying to achieve. And every company is a little bit different with how they want to use their content marketing strategy. And I think in some cases a company is looking at it, you know, trying to look at it from a lead gen or customer service perspective. I think you really have to sit back and say, okay, how can I help people and simplify their lives and make things a little bit easier? And, you know, if you're manufacturing, you know, video cameras, for example, and I'm doing work for a company called Video 360, and they, you know, we're building out a content marketing strategy for 2014. And it's going to run the gamut. It's going to include, you know, how to do webinars effectively for companies. It's going to include, you know, what kinds of webinar, you know, tools are out there for people to use. And it's going to get technical. It's going to talk about how to use cameras and how to, you know, the right kinds of lighting and those kinds of things. But that's basically what we found out from the customer base. Hey, this is what we're interested in, you know, before we make a camera purchase. And as we're kind of going through this, what kinds of stuff can we be doing and how do we get there? So simplifying things, giving people very specific kinds of directions and blog content is a very easy and effective way to start mapping out what your particular content marketing strategy is going to be. Another challenge people have, and I see this more on the SMB side, is with buy-in. People understand, yeah, I need a website. People understand, yeah, I want to get into social media, even though they may not understand why. They just kind of think they need to be there. When it comes to content marketing and you start talking about writing and blogging and things like that, people really just, it's a hard sell. And so I think you almost have to kind of be patient with it and come in with a phased approach, kind of some of what we've alluded to and what Michael's talked about too when talking about starting slow. It's not just true of social media, it's true of content marketing as well. You have to start at a certain point and make sure that you're not going beyond what your capability is to sustain it. And that's one of the fastest ways people stop blogging and stop writing. They have this great plan that they're going to write every single day, and they're going to put out 100 blog posts in the first 2 months and all this kind of stuff. And then after a week and a half, they're like, I'm done. And so I think managing the expectations internally and building towards something, I think is another key facet that's going to help you with your planning and also with getting that buy-in that you need. The last piece is going to be measurement, that I think is a key for people as they build out their content marketing strategy and going into 2014. And by measurement, what is it that you really want to achieve? Do you want to just get a lot of likes? Do you want people commenting on your post? So a lot of that depends upon what it is that you're writing and what it is that you're doing. It'll depend too on your email strategy as well in terms of how you're getting that content shared. Email is still pound for pound the most cost-effective and easiest way to distribute content. There are lots of other ways that you can do it. You can, depending upon the size of your organization, you can start investing in in paid advertising of content, using Outbrain or other kinds of modules and things like that. So there are a lot of options. I think it really just comes down to sitting and thinking about, from the very core, who we are, who's our customer, what are the 5 things that they're really interested in, what's going to make their life really easy, and ultimately, hopefully, bring them to us on a recurring basis and use us as a resource. And then, hey, well, we've solved this problem. Hey, we've got this particular product or service or solution, and it can help you take things to the next level. So those are sort of, I think, 3 core things that I think people are thinking about and should be thinking about as they build out their strategy.
Great. Michael Fleischner, go ahead. Give us some tidbits before we conclude here, sir.
Yeah, I know we're kind of at the 3 o'clock hour, so just really one final comment. I think Michael really covered a lot of the key aspects around content marketing, especially when it comes to managing expectations and measurement. My contribution, I think, is if you are developing content, again, like we talked about even back in SEO, think multimedia. What are you producing, and how can you repackage that in different ways to not only create content that's going to be engaging, but to really create value for that target audience or that end user. And I know, McKay, obviously I've given you kudos before, but I mean, Log My Calls is a great example. You guys started with the webinars, you started to get traction, you created value for a lot of the businesses you work with. They've told others about these webinars, and even I tune in really to hear other industry experts talk on a topic, and you guys do a good job of repackaging it so it's available online and in other ways. And I think that's really a great takeaway for 2014 is as you are creating content in your business, what could be valuable to your customer base, and how can you share that using different multimedia?
Well, thanks for the compliment, Michael. I just to put my 2 cents in on content marketing, I think the 2 things that are really important as we close with content is, number 1, like Michael Hackmer said, you don't want to make this grand plan and then not follow through or not have the capability to follow through. But at the same time, it's also important that you make the needle move. So, I mean, if you're doing maybe 1 or 2 blog posts a week or whatever the number is you're doing now, 1 or 2 a month, you can spend all the time and write the best content in the world, but it's going to be challenging for people to find it. And one thing we actually did that worked really well is we started writing 2 or 3 blogs a day. Now, that's not possible for everybody. We understand that. But the needle moved. Google took notice. People took notice we were writing as much as we were, and our blog traffic increased by 700–800% over the next 6–7 months. And so you do have to produce enough content to move the needle. The other thing I would say as well is I think Michael Hackmer said this, is you have to focus on what your clients and what your audience needs and wants. So what are their fears? What are their risks? What are things that you can teach them based on your expertise? And some people say, well, what can I teach? I mean, this is my industry's boring, or my industry, how can I produce useful content? My goodness, if you're an insurance agent, you have a ton to write about. People care about that stuff. If you're in an auto repair shop, you have a ton to write about. People care about that stuff and would love to learn the things that you know how to do. So these are pieces of content that you can write and prepare and shoot videos of on your smartphone and post that don't take that much time because they're already your expertise. So that's kind of where I'd like to leave it. You can see the results on your screen there of our poll. It looks like the vast majority of you are engaged in content marketing or have a plan to do so soon. So that's very good. Gentlemen, I want to thank you both for your time on this panel today. We appreciate it. I want to go just for final last thoughts on trends in 2014. Michael Fleischner, you first. Any final thoughts before we conclude today?
Start from where you are and put a plan together. I think the companies that actually sit and spend some additional time planning, putting together a strategy, they're going to be a lot more successful during the year than people who do a little bit of this, a little bit of that without any real plan.
And Michael Hackmer, last word.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's all about planning. It's all about understanding your customer, and ultimately, I think working with people who have some sort of niche within your industry that enjoy working with the kinds of people that you have to work with on a day-to-day basis. Don't work with companies that just don't seem to get who you are or what you're about. And I think that's all about part of the relationship building that you want to do. Is if you're working with vendors, it's got to be a good fit, just as you're trying to create a good fit between you and the customer. So I think those are the key things.
Awesome. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. And everybody, thank you for your attendance today. You're going to get an email tomorrow morning that has the webinar recording attached to it. It'll also have contact information as to how you can get a hold of our panelists and myself. So stay tuned for that email. Watch that. Share that on social media. Again, thanks for your time today. To see this webinar recording, you can also go to logmycalls.com/webinar, logmycalls.com/webinar. And then you can also sign up for future webinars. So next week, we have a webinar about creating a call to action that matters by Lois Brayfield. She's the president of a consulting firm. And then we also have a webinar with an email marketing company on how to create effective emails. And so that is going to be a fantastic webinar as well. So again, the URL is logmycalls.com/webinar. So thanks again, Michael Hackmer, Michael Fleischner. Thank you for your time, everybody. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of the week.